Good afternoon. This is Dr. David back with another episode of the Fresh Start with Dr. David podcast. It's been a couple of weeks, and I have been busy, which I'll be sharing with you in just a few minutes. Some very, very exciting opportunities. And I'll be introducing my guest expert today on a topic that I personally love just because the way that we handle it and the way that we look at it and kind of the analysis that we use for it, I think it can be applied to so many mental health disorders, personal circumstances and situations and challenges and things like that. I think it's just brilliant. So I'm really excited about the topic that I'm going to be speaking about today and conversing with my expert special guest. And it's also a topic that I've talked about in the past. So there is a previous episode, I believe it's during season 2, where I also talked about this topic. So I'm really, really excited to be back with everybody. I've had a bunch of new subscribers lately. I'm really excited about that. So welcome back to the Fresh Start with Dr. David podcast. It is the spring/summer of 2024. We've just entered June. So as you know, I'm a huge believer in the energy and the power of the seasons, regardless of your beliefs. We can all acknowledge that certain things happen on this planet during certain times of the year. Certain times of the year, this planet gets colder. Other times of the year, it has more daylight. Other times of the year, we get more rain. Other times of the year, plants grow and sprout. And other times they recede. So everything on this planet operates according to seasons. And I try to use that in my own life. One of the things that I try to do in my own life is I try to plant seeds during certain times of the year. And then I do things to cultivate and grow and then later harvest them. So I kind of use that approach. I try to live my life according to the seasons. I have a course that I do. If you're ever interested, feel free to get in contact with me and I can tell you about it. But I do a course every year in concordance with the season. So I really do believe that you should try to act in accordance and concordance with the planet and our seasons, the energy of that. And I just think it adds a lot to your life. So anyway, welcome to this season of energy. There are a lot of things going on. I'm so happy to announce that my office, as you know, I have offices in Buckhead and I also have offices in Decatur, which are both in the greater Atlanta area. But I will be closing my office in Decatur between now and the end of July and opening up a suite of offices with multiple professionals in the Brookhaven area. And that's going to happen between now and the end of next month. So I'm really, really excited about that. That'll be closer to my office in Buckhead. So you'll have the option of having an appointment at either my Brookhaven offices or my Buckhead office, whichever is more convenient for you. And also, as you know, you also have the option of doing some appointments virtually if you like. So with that, let's get started with today. I've got a very, very special expert guest. His name is Gary Scott. He's also known as Gare Bear or the Garinator, if you want to take an Arnold Schwarzenegger Terminator kind of approach to it. But welcome, Gary Scott.
Doctor, that was epic. That was absolutely the best go.
You mean the Garinator?
Ever thrown at me.
The Garinator?
That was epic. Well, I have to say thank you for this. You are kind of like my spirit animal as far as, what you do, where you're taking things, the direction you're going with stuff. I mean, I just have such a strong belief in what you're doing and how you're doing it. So this is really exciting for me. So grateful for your time. You're so busy. I don't even know how you do all this. So thank you for allowing me in.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I'm never too busy. Never too busy. I am, and as you know, I am busy. And people always tell me to slow down. And I say, well, you know what? That's one of my life lessons. I have to work on that all day, every day. So I do work on slowing down. But, you're right. A lot of times I work 7 days a week. I believe, not that I'm counting, I believe I've had 10 days off since December 27th when I returned from the holidays last year. But you know what? A lot of people might complain about it. Typically I work 6-7 days a week and I try to work under 80 hours a week, but a lot of times I try to keep it in the sweet spot of around 60-65. But here's the way that I look at it. The way that I look at it is God and the universe have given me so many opportunities to share who I am with the world and to help other people grow. And those opportunities don't last forever. So my goal is to maximize those. But you're right, work-life balance is also important. So that is a life lesson that I'm always trying to learn and teach myself and share with others. But I'm so thrilled to have you. You have such great energy. For people who don't know, I'm a huge believer in energy. I think there's so many things that we can see, and we can use senses to see and hear and all those kind of things. But there are also things that, that we feel and that we know are there, that we sense. And when it comes to people, I've always been I've always been empathic. I've always been someone who sensed things from people. Even if they were going through pain and hiding it, I could always tell. And when I was a child, I didn't know what to do with that. But as an adult, it guides a lot of like the healing work that I do. So I'm so happy to have you here today, Gear Garaneda. And, with that, how about you, rather than me introduce you, how about you introduce us to you and tell us all about who you are, what you do, and what you bring, because there's so much there.
Well, right on. Thank you for that. Just real quick. I mean, I've always from birth been a health nut. I was the only geek in high school who ate the one salad that they would actually put up, while I was eating pizza and all this stuff. And my friends just made fun of me that my yearbook was full of the salad, dude.
Oh, funny.
So I've always been about health, diet, exercise, things like that, what we're putting in our body, inflammation diets and things like that.
Yeah.
Has always been important to me. And I know how important that is to you. But how I got here was greatest life in the world, just such a blessed human. And then my first wife, April, got sick. She got cancer, fought it for a couple of years. I was her caregiver. It was just the most brutal, couple of years. She passed, and of course, this was 2014. So I went through the massive crash and burn mission that happens many times when people lose someone who was my, childhood sweetheart. As it happened, a very good friend of mine, he was losing his wife to cancer.
Oh, wow.
Didn't want to reach out to me because he's like, dude, I don't want to bring Gare down. I mean, but he finally did. And I said, dude, why did you wait to call me? So we started having these long conversations about what was going on with his healing and his wife dying and stuff like that.
Right.
And then I got cancer. So I'm like, wait, double win. Now I get both sides of it. I can be the caregiver, and I can also be the victim, not the patient, because with cancer, there isn't a patient, you're a victim. And then through that, we created a podcast that we were doing called Grief Pie. Okay. And basically, we were just trying to reach out to men initially to say, hey, listen, men, you guys don't talk.
Right.
You can't bury the stuff. Men are just horrible at being afraid to. I mean, like in the military, God forbid you say that I'm hurting, and they kick you out, right?
Right.
I mean, it's mad that men aren't allowed to share. So we started this grief pie. Through this, just so many people reached out. So many people. I'm just hearing so many stories. I'm like, holy cow! I had no idea how much pain was out there, right? So I got involved with this program called the Grief Recovery Institute. I got myself certified in the grief recovery method. Okay. So that when people are reaching out to me, I actually have some skills, right, to try to help people work through stuff. Besides that, then we changed the focus from men to just everyone, because it's just so prevalent with that, and that's kind of it. And now I want to reach out to more people. I want to try to help more people, not just with grief, but with all aspects. And that's why I was so just drawn to you, because you're my ideal about, you encompass so much of the healing process, not just one specific thing. And I just think that's amazing. So anyways, that's how I'm here.
Well, thank you. Thank you. No, that was a great synopsis. And thank you so much for your kind words. So much of what you just said resonated with me, because, on other podcasts, I've talked about, one of the reasons why I started this podcast in the first place was just because I've always believed, and I think part of it was my medical education and training, but I think a part of it was some of the training that I did outside of medical school. But, I started this podcast because to me, there's so many problems with the healthcare system. It's like, where do you even start? A lot of times people start with insurance and stuff like that, but that's, to me, that's not even really the genesis of where the problems start. But that's why I started it. And then I also started it because of mental health and the status of mental health in this country and the crisis. And I didn't want to just have a podcast or a show where I just talk about challenges, problems, and dilemmas. I wanted one that was also focused on solutions because to me, you start with a problem that leads you to a question, and that question hopefully leads you to search for some answers and find some solutions. So that's why I started this podcast. One of the reasons why I love and honestly, it blows me away sometimes some of the details that I remember from college and high school and things like that. Stuff that other people have totally forgotten. They're like, "You remember that?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And it's amazing. And in my case, I can actually say that after a 30-year habit of smoking cigarettes, even if it wasn't a high amount, my memory has totally increased. I made the decision to quit smoking on January 28th of 2019. And
Congratulations.
absolutely. And the funny thing about it is when I made that decision, I kind of was, I guess my thinking, and that was over 5 years ago. My thinking was kind of like, my memory's not as sharp. My thinking's not as sharp. I guess that's just part of getting old. But actually, it was not. It was smoking. And, one of the biggest messages that I try to send to people, whether they're vaping, and vaping is in a lot of ways more addictive than cigarette smoking. But one of the biggest messages I try to tell people is that, yeah, smoking's bad for your lungs and it's bad for your body, but just think about what it does to your brain, honestly. And
Well,
so
your brain gets clogged up with nicotine and it can't function.
absolutely, absolutely worse than any place else, actually. So it's funny, but, I remember specifically and I can't remember what year this was. It's obviously during the 90s when I was in college. But I remember when I read in one of my psychology books about the Kubler-Ross theory about grief and the stages of grief and different things like that. So I do remember covering that in college. And then later on, I saw where several authors and experts and psychologists had expanded upon that and had added different things to it. The thing that I liked about the concept of grief is a couple different things. Number one, similar to kind of addiction theories, is that one of the things about grief is that it's a process. It's a process that you constantly work through. And it's generally not ever fully 100% resolved. So I liked that kind of idea about it. The other thing that I liked about it was the systematic approach. And, as a Virgo, as a, as, I
No,
mean,
I'm a Virgo male. Oh,
y-
jeez.
yeah, as a male Virgo, as an MD, very analytical and very systematic about everything for the most part. In fact, part of my life lessons is like to let some things go and go with the flow and not try to plan everything. But I love that it has a system. So one of the things that really got me about grief and some of the latest postulates and theories and methods of coping with it was the systematic approach to it, which we'll be diving into today and which I've also talked about during a previous podcast episode. But in terms of you, if, I would kind of get a sense of kind of, what it was like for you when you first started kind of dealing with it. Because one of the things that I'm a big believer in is that our brains try to predict the future. Our brains really work hard to try to piece together ideas and material. And I really, really do believe that in a lot of ways, our brains, different parts of our brain, try to deal with grief before it happens, especially if you're talking about somebody who has a diagnosis or a chronic illness or something like that. So I really do believe that we kind of pre-grieve. But tell me a little bit, if you wouldn't mind, share a little bit about kind of your experiences about about what the things that started to lead you to this direction.
Well, you know, talking to people, hearing their stories, you know, it's a thing that grief is we've got grief is about a broken heart, not a broken brain.
Right.
Right. And so, like you said, it's such a process. And even Kubler-Ross stepped back from her with denial, anger, bargaining, depression,
Right.
and acceptance because
Right.
she said, I came up with that for someone who is dying.
Right.
Right. For the patient who's dying, the person
Right.
who's going through the end of their life, goes through
Right.
these stages.
Right.
The person who survived, the griever,
Right.
doesn't necessarily go through these stages. It's not as
Right.
set in stone as her
Right.
person who's going through the grief.
Right.
And then the people expand it to 7 and 9 and things like
Right.
that to try to
Right.
create that. But
Right.
when you look at the grief, and you look at death, divorce, loss of a job, loss of a business, loss of a pet is a massive area of grief. I was shocked at
Yes.
how
Yes.
loss of a pet affects. So when I'm looking at all these areas, I'm like, holy cow. And then, like you said, COVID exposed it even more to a degree where
Yeah.
people like, wow, I'm not going to hide this anymore
Mm-hmm.
because so many people are going through it. I'm just going to come out of the closet and go, yeah, I'm really suffering. And so being an empath myself, being a little empathetic, not quite like a Virgo, holy
Yeah.
cow.
Absolutely.
Virgos just own empathy
Absolutely.
and
Libras,
perfection.
Libras too,
And,
from what I've heard.
and right. Yeah. I just felt very strongly that I needed I needed to do more.
Right.
I completely crashed and burned
Mm.
with the passing of my wife. I mean, mistake after mistake after mistake and then mistake. So when I'm talking to people and they go, I feel really bad, I did this, I did that, I'm like, dude, hold my beer. No way. You have to understand, you can't own that.
Hmm.
You can't blame yourself for what happened during this period, right? Because there's so much healing. And then the interesting thing, many people have come to me with something like the loss of a pet or the loss of a spouse.
Right.
Once we go a little deeper,
Yeah.
that's really not even the foundation
Right. Right.
for the biggest part of their grief.
Bingo. Bingo. It goes back earlier. Yeah.
Yep.
It goes back earlier. I say that to my clients all the time. One of the things that I do, one of the tools that I use that I love in my office, and I will never, ever, ever have a professional office that doesn't include one, is I have a whiteboard. And I do a lot of coaching with my clients. And we work through things. And it doesn't matter whether it's somebody who's got chronic panic attacks, or if they are depressed, or if they're anxious, or if they've got, adjustment-oriented issues, or, problems with life direction, or problems with procrastination or decision making or whatever. We get on that whiteboard and we work through it and we get to the bottom of it. And every single time, without fail, 100% of the time, no matter what problem somebody presents with, it goes back to something during childhood. I had a client recently who's had panic attacks recently, which we're starting to overcome and conquer. And one of the things that we realize is that his panic attacks are emanating from things that happened to him during his childhood. So I think, and we all go through losses at different points in life. And so the thing about it is I kind of use the thing about like a scab or a scar or a cut, almost regardless of where you get a cut or, a sore or something like that on your arm or your leg, chances are you previously had one at some earlier stage. So,
yeah.
I mean,
and what you said about that is like so dead on, Dr. D, because, people think of loss is like we said, a pet, a spouse, a divorce, something like that. But there's loss of trust. There's loss of safety.
Yep.
There's
Security.
loss of control over your body if you were maybe molested as a child or something like that.
Yeah.
So there's so many different levels of the loss that may be buried under so much of our life, so much of our garbage that we think it's this, but it most likely is not. It's that deeper level, especially the loss of safety when you're a child. If something's going on with your parents or something's going on at school or you've been bullying or something like that, that loss is so strong, that loss of safety,
that loss
it
of
can
self,
stay with you forever.
Loss of self. When you lose safety, when you lose security, you're losing elements that are within you. So it's a loss of self too.
Absolutely.
It truly is a loss of self.
And I was just blown away by the amount of different things that you're working through, helping people work through. I mean, it was astounding. I'm like, holy cow,
Mm,
because those things, if we tore them into a piece of paper and tore them and put them in a jar or funnel or whatever, I mean,
right.
it's just so full, and yet you pulled them out. It's like so many people are going to be able to pull one out and have something in their past or in their background from what healing that you're working on. So I was like, that's amazing. I mean, and the success you're having is crazy, but I think if that whiteboard is
Mm.
epic. I love that.
Oh my
If
God.
you saw my office
It's
right now or
magic.
my room, I take those big stickies,
Uh-huh.
those big huge stickies, and I
Uh-huh.
stick them up
Right.
as I'm working with individual people, so I could take that sticky
Yep.
off and say, "Here's what we worked with. Here's what I wrote down. You know, let's keep this." And it's magical because you see it. You see what's going on, and that's awesome. I love you do that.
Yeah, I mean, because we're visual creatures. I mean, as you may or may not know, you know, I believe in a lot of kind of outside the cuff of medicine modalities, things like NLP or neuro-linguistic programming, hypnosis, hypnotherapy, which was used by, Dr. Sigmund Freud, the father of psychiatry, and Dr. Milton Erickson, another prominent psychiatrist in history. So, I mean, I use a lot of outside the box techniques, and my assumption is always that there's not a single answer. That it's a mix and match of different puzzle pieces that you put together, and you could start in different places, but it involves a lot of different modalities and answers and solutions to kind of reach a place of clarity. And so one of the cool things about my whiteboard is, you know, when I do a whiteboard exercise with a client, I never write their name on the board. We put the problem or the topic at the top, and then we just kind of work through it. And the funny thing about it is a lot of times, if I haven't erased the whiteboard, the next client who comes in, they'll be talking about their problem or some dilemma that they have or a challenge. And they'll look up at
Right.
the whiteboard and they're like, oh my God, that's the answer to my problem. And I'm like, that's a process that works for everything. It's amazing. And then they'll say, can I take a picture of it? Yada yada yada. How does this relate to my problem? And it does. It's a formula. One of the
Yeah.
things that you mentioned that I think is really 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 kind of key here and important, at least kind of my thinking, because I also do consulting work in forensic psychiatry and in addiction psychiatry. And one of the big concepts in addiction psychiatry is just kind of the notion that people crash and burn. Like, people decide to get help when something happens, some sentinel event, or they've lost everything, I mean, the down and out drug addict, that kind of thing. They've hit rock bottom. One of the things that you mentioned is, when you were starting to encounter, some challenges and things like that, you kind of crashed and burned. In terms of, I guess that kind of sparked my curiosity. In terms of you crashing and burning, I know people use that phrase a lot, but how did that materialize? What did that mean for you? Like, what was the crash and the burn for you? The symbols, the signs and symptoms and symbols that let you know that you needed to kind of regroup and reboot.
Oh, there were many. I my wife passed in December of 2014, and in March of 2015, I was engaged to
Oh,
a
wow.
young lady that I just met. A spectacular woman, loved her son. Her son desperately needed a father figure. I was just going to adopt this kid. My kids liked her son, did not like her, and were mad at her. And so that in 2 years of I just hurt a lot of people there. And the interesting thing about that
Hmm.
was that everyone blamed her.
Hmm.
And I just felt so bad about that. Like, how could you get with someone whose wife just died? You know, what were you thinking? What's wrong with you? But she had her needs also. So, you know,
Bingo.
she had
Bingo.
hurt. She had been
Yep.
divorced. She had a horrible 9 year marriage. You know, her husband forgets to even send birthday and Christmas cards. I mean, he was just
Wow.
not a good guy, right? So I blow my own horn. I'm a spectacular guy. I'm a great dad. I was a great
Absolutely.
husband.
I
I just
agree.
remarried.
100%.
I'm a great husband to my current wife. We're best friends. We're partners. But the thing is, she had needs too, so she clung
Hmm.
on to what
Right.
she thought was good for her. There's no blame there at all,
Right.
and there's no blame on me. I missed my companion. I miss my partner. I'm not a dater. I love to be
Right.
in a relationship, right?
Right.
So I immediately clung on to the first person I had a glass of wine with. But when I left her, when I called everything off, I canceled 2 weddings and called everything off. Just
Wow. Two
I heard
weddings?
so many people. Yeah, 2 weddings. I
Wait,
canceled
so
two weddings.
this is to the same woman.
Yep,
So
we
you
were
were going to
set
get
to get
married to her
married.
twice and you canceled two weddings.
2 weddings. We were set to get married,
Wow.
like we got engaged in March and we are going to get married in October. I had to cancel that. And then we were going to get married again in like February. I canceled that one. And then down the road, I moved out.
There's a movie about that. Isn't there a movie about like the runaway bride or something like that? Or
Oh,
uh,
I think there is
the
exactly. I think
princess
it is called The
bride
Runaway
or
Bride,
runaway bride or something. Yeah. Oh my
something like
God.
that.
I just thought
So,
that was fictional. Oh my
but
God.
when I left her,
Hmm.
that's when it really spiraled because I compounded everything in my mind. Not only did I run from the pain of my wife's passing and just completely ignore it, just completely run from it, then
Right.
I got into a beautiful family, just destroyed those poor folks. I mean, she was devastated. The son was devastated. Her family loved me. They were devastated. Cost myself a lot of money canceling 2 weddings. And then
Yeah.
through my grief, through my pain, and because your body is so much smarter than you are, I
Right.
went to a real estate conference. I'm a real estate broker.
Right.
I went to a real estate conference and I'm standing there looking at a pair of socks, talking to this guy, and boom. Next thing I knew, I woke up in a wheelchair with an ambulance and they're taking me to the hospital. I'm like, why do you guys have me in a wheelchair? So basically, I just had a nervous breakdown. So through that nervous, they put me through all the tests. They said, dude, it's a visual vagal. You know what it is because you're doctors. Like people see the sight of blood and faint.
Was it a
They call that
stroke
a visual
or kind of or
vagal.
more of a
No,
shock event? So
no,
it's more of a
it was
psychogenic.
people see the sight of blood and they faint.
Right.
There's a name for what happens to your brain when it shuts down to save you. And my brain said,
Shock.
dude, you are in a really bad spot. I'm
Yeah.
going to shut you down. And it did, right? And so, and then from there, I slowly kind of started to work on myself. I
Mm-hmm.
quit drinking. I
Mm-hmm.
got way back into my exercise program, way back into my diet, and just said, listen, you've got to heal yourself. But most importantly, you've got to face April's death. I
Mm.
mean, you just have to. Now, along the way, of course, I made a few more mistakes and hurt some more people, but through that, I knew the entire time my gut told me, you know what the challenge is, and you're just not facing it. And until you do, you're just going to keep screwing up.
Now, let me ask you a question about that. Before you came to that realization, had it been your perception that you had already worked through that grief or not?
Absolutely.
You were convinced that you had worked through it, right?
Yes, I can. Yeah, I did not want to face it. Didn't want to look at it. Couldn't. I mean, I was her caretaker for 2 years. I absolutely
Yeah.
loved my first wife, April. Like no, but we were kids when we got together. We just loved each other, right? So while she was sick and dying of cancer, and you know what they put people through when they know
Yes.
they just kill you. It was so devastating to me that when she finally passed, and you have that guilt of relief,
Yeah.
like, oh my God, thank God they're gone because I'm dying,
Right.
she's dying. I don't know how much longer I could have taken it.
Right.
Right. So you have the guilt of that, and then
Right.
you have the grief, right? So I knew that I wasn't facing either one of them.
Right.
I was just running.
Wow. And running, that I love the word that you used, running, because that says a lot right there. Fight or flight. In turn, and then after she passed, you then learned that you had cancer as well?
It was after I remarried, lucky my wife, and it was about 6 years after she passed, 7 years after she had passed, I found out I had cancer. And so I went to my new wife and I said, honey, I want a divorce. And she was a little shocked and she said, why? I go, well, because you are not a caretaker and you're not a caregiver. I said, no offense. That's nothing. That's your nature. There's nothing wrong with that. You're a Gemini. I said,
Okay.
so to save
She already
you
has a
from
twin to
what's
take care of.
Yeah, exactly. She has no interest in taking out care of someone else. So to keep you from going through what I went through and what caretakers go through, and you end up saying, well, he's sick and he's dying and I can't do this anymore, so I'm leaving,
Right.
right? You leave now
You're going to be
because that
proactive
way,
about it.
yeah, that way you aren't the bad guy. If you
Right.
leave me now, it's like, yeah, it didn't work out, whatever. I just hide the cancer and I just do my stuff and I'm fine. You leave when I'm in the weeds and I'm really sick and dying, you'll never forgive yourself. It'll
Wow.
be a whole different thing, right?
Wow.
So you leave now
That's a
because I
bright
don't
way of
want you to
handling it.
go through. Yeah. And
That's
she's
a
like,
really
no, no,
bright way
no.
of handling it.
Well, so what I did is I completely kept her away from all treatments. I said, well, if you're going to stay, you're not going to my radiology. You're not watching me get fried. You're not going to my chemo. You're not going to my surgery. You're not doing anything. I need you to go live your life, go scuba diving. She's a scuba instructor. You go travel. You live your life. I've got this. I've been here. I know what to do.
Hmm.
Fortunately, it was caught very early, stage one, and I got through it. Well, you can hear my lisp. I still can't talk because it cut out my tongue and all this other stuff. But, but so I was not going to subject her to that.
And she went along with that?
100%.
Wow. Why do
Yep.
you think that is?
Because she knew it was the right thing.
Okay.
She knew in her gut, as much as you don't want to admit to yourself
Right.
that, hey, but I was not going to accept either.
I was about
It
to
was, I mean,
say
it's going to say,
that's why she
you
went along
are,
with it because she wasn't going to get any other choice because
nope.
you understood the mechanics of it and she just had to trust you.
It's either divorce
Right.
or I'm going to take care of this and you're going to live your life. You're
Wow.
not going to hear me whine. You're not going to hear me snivel. You're going to watch me get really ugly and sick. And I'm sorry about that, but
Right.
we'll deal with that as those events occur.
Right.
And so, no, she didn't take me to single chemo, single radiation. She did, bring me back from the surgery because we
Right.
had to go to San Diego and have it done. But I mean, so she drove me home, but yeah. So, but see, that felt better to me
Right.
because cancer, as you know, is an animal that cannot be controlled.
Right. And you wanted
So
some
you
control over the
search desperately.
process.
Yeah, you search desperately for some sort of control
Yeah.
in your life because it's spinning out of control.
Absolutely.
And for me, that was hugely important way to do it.
Wow. That is amazing because one of some of my favorite words or words that are about being proactive, proactivity, preemptive, all of those things that take into account thinking and analyzing about things and planning for things before they happen. So I love that approach. And I think that's incredible that, obviously there's a tremendous amount of trust between you two for her to go along with that. Cause that's basically an ultimatum. Either we're going to get a divorce or we're going to handle it this way. So that's an amazing amount of bonding and trust that you guys clearly have and had in order to allow that to happen that way.
Well, we got together during COVID. It
Oh,
was a
okay.
fluke how we got together. She reached out to me and friended me, and she chased me down because I'm
Uh-huh.
just that good looking.
Uh-huh.
And I think we just bonded so strongly over
Mm-hmm.
being the way we are.
Right.
She's a Gemini. I'm an Aries.
Right.
I love the child in the Gemini. I love that it's twins. You wake up every day. You don't know who you're going to be with. My
Right.
first wife was a Gemini. We both are scuba divers. We're hikers. We're exercisers. We're golfers. We're gun enthusiasts. We're we just are really
Huh.
compatible. I told her, had I not been so damn sexually attracted to you, we would have been really good friends
Wow.
because we're just super compatible. So
Nice.
she's been married three other times,
No,
twice to
really?
the same, yeah, twice to the same guy. It's kind of a weird story. So she's only been married to two guys, but she's been
I
married
think
three
that's
times.
more common than we realize, honestly. Or maybe it's just
Multiple
the field that I
marriages.
work in. Well,
Yeah,
no, I mean people being married to the same person more than once.
that's a trip, isn't it? It's true.
I never realized how, and maybe it's because I work in forensics and do relationship work and things like that. But I'm amazed at how many people have said that they were either engaged to the same person twice or they married and then divorced and then remarried the same person again.
It's a weird kind of phenomenon, but
I think it
I've heard
happens
people
more
say it's like
often.
stepping in poop twice. You see it again, and you go, "I'm going to step in it again," which is a bad analogy,
Right.
but I'll just leave it here is just that because of that, and because of what I went through, and who she and I are together, is truth. That's
Mm-hmm.
the one thing we said as our foundation,
Mm-hmm.
because she had been hurt a lot. I had not, but I said that you and I will be, you and I will have a relationship that other people will either be enamored by or horrified by, because it's like we talk about people, all the divorces that happened during COVID because people got stuck at home and they didn't even like each other, right? They're
Right.
like,
Or didn't
I
even
want a
know each
divorce, I
other.
hate you, right?
Or
Yeah,
didn't
don't know
even
each other.
know each other.
So our relation has been grounded in ultimate truth since the day we got together, and just speak it. Don't hide it. Speak it. I could see it in your face. What's going on? And I think that helped us get through that.
Now tell me about how you started with how you found the center that you found, how your training started, how that whole journey began.
Someone on Facebook had watched a podcast
Uh-huh.
and said, "Dude, I love your podcast, but I'll never watch it again. I can't handle it. It's too honest. It's too deep. You guys just are like, I can't watch it." And
Okay.
and I've heard that over and over, and that's why I'm
Huh.
changing the whole foundation of I'm changing the grief pie into a completely different
Huh.
podcast.
Right.
It was just too much for people. We were too
Right.
honest. We brought people in who just, buried their soul, and it was just too tough for a lot of people. So,
Right.
but
It
he
was
did
too
say to
raw.
me, do yourself a favor and go get pick up. I'm a big time reader, and he said get the Grief Recovery Handbook and
Huh.
just read it. He goes, I think
Wait,
that
say
you'll
that
really.
again.
It's called Grief Recovery Handbook,
Grief Recovery Handbook.
and it's
Okay.
by the Grief Recovery Institute. And these
Okay.
two guys founded it like 40 some odd years ago,
Oh.
and they are like the only, I guess they call it, accredited grief program with proven results and things like that. And their
Huh.
process is really great. So I've read a lot of books
Huh.
on grief and healing and
Okay.
stuff like that. This one really stuck with me because their bottom line was, you know, you don't you grief, although it is a process, it's
Right.
not a life-term sentence.
Right.
The person's gone, but you're not,
Right.
and so the process that we go through, that we take people through, helps them free themselves, help them be able to say goodbye to
Right.
the grief without saying goodbye to the person, right? And to
Love
me,
that.
that was so important because having lost someone so close to me, you have that fear. Well, if I let go, or if I remarry, or if I'm happy, God
Right.
forbid I'm happy
Right.
again,
I'm
right?
betraying
That
the
somehow
person.
that hurts them.
Right.
Exactly.
I'm
So
betraying the person that I lost.
yeah, so that Grief Recovery Institute was really awesome. So went through the certificate program. I'm going deeper and deeper into the training with them, and I
Huh.
just, it's just my passion now. It's just like if I never sold another house again and just went broke and had to eat beans and just like work with people,
Uh-huh.
that's it. I just this is I'm just driven by this. I'm just like you said. I mean, grief is it's so massive,
Yeah.
and there's so many levels of it, Dr. David, that,
Right.
I mean, you'll never hit bottom.
One of the principles that I'm a strong believer in and I share with my clients, and it's one of those kind of universal, I believe in a lot of things. I believe in astrology. I believe in numerology, I believe in psychology. I believe in karma. I believe in the law of attraction. One of the things that I also kind of believe in, aside from those things, is the concept of transference and balance. And when I say that, what I mean is I truly, truly believe that a lot of the things that we claim that we want are on the other side of us letting go of the things that don't serve us. I truly believe that. And I, and
That's
I,
it. Perfect. Exactly.
and I
Yep.
use an analogy with people. And I really do believe this is kind of how we're wired in a lot of ways, but we are collectors. We collect. Our DNA collects things. Most of our DNA, people don't know this, most of our DNA is junk DNA or filler DNA. It just means the same thing repeated over and over again. Kind of like how a teacher would make you write, "I will not talk in class while the teacher speaks," over and over on a paper. I mean, that's how our
Right.
DNA is organized, and most of it is DNA that's just repeated over and over again. But we collect things, even if it's the same thing over, and you'll see people, like these mega billionaires and millionaires who have like the same Bugatti just in a different color. They'll have like 18 Bugattis. It's like, okay, it's a $2 million car, and two wasn't good enough. Two colors wasn't. You had to have it in every variation. Like, come on. I mean, seriously, it just makes no sense.
Yep.
But that's what we do, and I always
Yeah.
tell people, when I work with clients and I see objectively the things that they're holding on to and trying to help them free themselves from and let go and release, it's kind of like if you met somebody and they had two, let's say they were an orphan, right? You met this orphan who's 15, and they've got these two beat up, busted, scorched earth suitcases with tattered clothing, rags, et cetera, et cetera. But the things that they've collected as an orphan over the last 15 years. And then you meet that person and you've got two suitcases, but your suitcases are immaculate and they're filled with millions of dollars. And you try to get that person to switch with you, and they go, well, those clear cases like you see on Let's Make a Deal or whatever, they look really attractive, and oh my God, I could buy an island and a mansion and all this stuff. But you know what? These are my suitcases. I'm not giving them up. And I mean, that's what we do. And so one of the things that I always try to share with people and illustrate and show them is that everything you want or desire is on the other side of the things that you need to give up in order to be free. And it takes a lot of energy to get that to happen.
Yeah. Outstanding. Yeah. I mean, that is, I know we've gone on here a little bit longer than we planned, but
No, there's no time
that to
limit.
me is
There's no
so
time
much
limit.
everything in a nutshell. There's just so much everything in it. It's like they say, we have 80,000 thoughts a day and 70% of them are negative, right? And
Mm-hmm.
probably even more than that.
Yeah,
And a big
more than that.
and as big of a portion of that is repetitive. It's
Yes.
the same negative. It's,
Right.
oh, we just beat each other up with the same
Mm-hmm.
stupid crap every day
Yep.
because it's ours. We're just holding on
Yep.
to it. And when you say, well, just why don't you let that go?
Yep.
Just the thought is mind blowing to people. Like,
Mm-hmm.
well, what do you mean I can't let that go? You go, well, why not?
Right.
Why can't you let that go? Let's try to work through the process of finding where you started holding that or collecting that, and then let's help you let it go.
And the thing about it is, it's a double negative anyway.
Yeah.
People are like, I can't let go of what I can't let go of. Okay. Let's reword that again. Two negatives together, that equals a positive. And that's that one of the, I always tell people, so many people seek me out because they want hypnosis or hypnotherapy. And hypnosis is a powerful technique. I love it. It works great. I get to be creative about it. But, I also believe a lot in cognitive behavioral therapies and life coaching. And I strongly, strongly, strongly believe in the Sedona method. And a lot of people my clients who come to me have no idea what the Sedona method is. And I tell them about it. And I'm like, it's a
Yep.
release technique. It's about letting go. And
Yep.
I tell them, we are engineered back, forward, side, up, and down to hold on to things. And so if you create problems by holding on to too many things, then the obvious solution is the opposite, to let go of it. But a lot of people do not, and it's a process. You don't just instantly learn to let go of stuff, and including grief. Grief is a big part of letting go of things. And I think that's one of the reasons why to me, it's such an interesting topic, because to me, the grieving process, or some of the strategic ways that we look at and deal with, and experts do with grief, is some of the same things that I see with the Sedona method, a way of just letting go of the things that you can't control, that don't serve you, that aren't abundant, that aren't empowering, and that keep you down and prevent you from getting what you really want.
Yeah. And it's that mindset of, if I do this, somehow it hurts someone else, or
Yes.
somehow this or that. And that is just your excuse mechanism.
You're just hurting yourself.
Continue to hold on to it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Logically in your mind that if you become happy and move on and remarry or do things in your life, you know logically your past spouse who has died is not going to be hurt by that.
Right.
Right. If there is a heaven or if there is spirit or
Right.
if there is all that stuff,
Right.
they're cheering you on.
Yeah.
Like I tell people all the time, I used to say when I was really in the weeds, I'd say, you know what? April would be kicking my ass right now. She'd be looking down going, dude, are you serious? That's not who I know. That's not my husband. That's not my man. My man wouldn't be doing that shit. What's wrong with you?
Right.
That's what she would be saying. She wouldn't be saying, oh, please don't move on. Please don't be happy. That's
Right.
going to hurt my feeling. That's
Right.
bull,
Right.
right?
Right.
So people have to spin that around.
That's
It's
an
like, why
illusion.
are you holding on to that? You're not holding it on for them because you know logically that's not right. You're holding it on for something else. Let's figure that out. Let's figure out why you're holding on to that belief. Until we do, you're going to keep holding on to it. Like you said, a double negative.
Why do you think that loss has come? Like, I see so many things about, and like I mentioned earlier, Anderson Cooper has done a thing on loss. Everybody, a lot of people, no, I shouldn't say everybody, most people kind of have a sense of Anderson Cooper's story with his brother and with his father losing them at early ages. And then, obviously COVID was not too long ago, but grief, loss, bereavement has become a huge topic right now. And, on top of that, there's kind of an epidemic with suicide right now. Why do you think that loss and grief and bereavement is at the forefront of things right now? Do you think there's a pattern to it or a reason why?
I think it's a double-edged sword.
Mm-hmm.
I do. I think there's two things working here right
Mm-hmm.
now. I think one, we're in the era of me, 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 me. Look at me, look at me, look at me. I'm
Yes.
gonna change my hair purple.
Yes.
I'm gonna pierce every body part. I'm going to whine on you. I'm gonna post something on Facebook that says, "Oh, please pray for me," and leave no other details.
Right.
Right? There's just attention deficit
Yep.
disorder,
Yeah.
or whatever we want to call it. But there's people desperately seeking attention
Attention.
in
Yeah.
any way they can, right? So I think part of it's that. But I think the
Mm-hmm.
other part is through COVID and through people getting more in touch with themselves and people knowing that it's okay to start sharing and opening up, especially this. We got this whole toxic masculinity thing that's floating around that is just so
Yeah.
ridiculous.
True.
And even, when you've got a guy like Jerry Seinfeld coming out and saying, "Hey, I miss masculinity," right? You know that stuff's getting sideways, and
Right.
I think there's two sides of it. I mean, one is just it's just me, 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 me. I'm going to try to out depress you or out grief
Right.
you, or I'm going to show I'm worse than you are. And
Right.
the other side of it is just people accepting now that you can actually, it's okay to open up, right?
Nice. That makes sense. I'd never looked at it like that, but I think you're absolutely right. I think it's kind of like this balance, this yin and yang of everybody wanting and needing attention and not knowing sure how to get it. And then on the other hand, people truly needing and being able to and free to ask for help. So yeah, no, I think that's a perfect dichotomy that describes it. Let's wrap up here and then I'll let you share how people can get in contact with you and things like that. But one of the big questions that I would like to kind of end with is for people who are experiencing grief or people who just experienced grief or just had someone to die or just get a diagnosis, things like that. What is the number one thing that you recommend that they can do right now to start working through it?
The number one thing that I tell everybody is keep talking. Keep
Mm,
talking. You are not bugging anybody. You
mm,
are not taking anyone's time. You are not overburdening them. You are not being a pain. We want desperately to hear from you. We just don't know what to say. We
mm,
don't know what to say to you to try to make something better because none of us do. We all say the wrong words. We say something
yep.
stupid. You lost your child and you go, "Oh, don't worry, you can have another one." Right? The
Right.
absolute worst thing you could say to someone is
Right.
something like that, right? So
Right.
we don't know what to say. So the griever has to understand. Listen, please keep reaching out. Please keep. It's like I joke to everybody. That thing about getting casseroles is 100% true. When April died, I had all these chicks bringing me casseroles and food. Right? I'm like, that's a real thing. I didn't know.
Really?
But But yeah, it's just crazy. But the
Wow.
thing is that peters out because people have lives. You have to
To live.
understand.
Yeah.
I hear people all the time go, "Oh, well, people stopped reaching out and I don't hear from
Right.
anyone and this and that." I go, because they've moved on. They
Right.
have lives. It's not because they don't love you. It's not because they don't
Right.
care. It's not that they're not concerned about you. So phones work both ways. So to
Sure.
answer your question, I'm sorry, I got a little
No,
long-winded there,
no.
is don't stop reaching out. Don't
Yeah.
wallow in your crap. Understand people want to hear from you, and you be proactive and reach out.
I love that. And the funny thing about it, how this all ties together is that's just the opposite of what you said that you were doing in the beginning, which was running away.
Exactly.
So
That's
instead of running
exactly what I
away,
did.
you're saying keep the conversation going, keep talking, keep it active, and keep working. I love
Yeah.
that. This has been a great conversation. I can't wait to have you as a guest again so we can kind of dive into some of the specific stages of grief and kind of your grief training and what your current thoughts are on grieving. Before we do, another episode on my podcast, how can people get in touch with you? What are some of the ways or some of the social media presences or conduits or avenues that people can reach out to you if they have questions about grief or they want to retain your services or something like that?
Okay, the best way to do that is I'm on Facebook, just my name, Gary Scott, but we
Okay.
also have a Grief Pie on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube. We have a Facebook, griefpie.com.
Uh-huh.
So you could reach out to me through any of the Grief Pie sources up there. Like I said, YouTube, Instagram, it's all over the place, the Grief Pie or the website. Really, the best way is just go on my personal Facebook and shoot me a DM and said, "Hey, dude, I heard your thing. Can we chat for a little bit?" I love to talk to people. I know people call it a consultation or whatever, initial consultation, or whatever. I just say, just call me,
Right.
DM me. I just desperately want to work with people. So thank you, Dr. David, for giving me this opportunity. Yeah, people just go on my Gary
Absolutely.
Scott Facebook and say, dude, I need to talk to you. And that would be the best way.
And tell me, I'm just curious, where did that I love it because to me it kind of goes along with the processes of grief and things like that. But where did grief pie come from? Is that from the casseroles or is that something
Uh, Actually,
or
it came
quiche?
from
Okay.
me and my buddy we were doing this together. Unfortunately,
Yeah.
Jim's had to step away,
Yeah.
but we were doing this together, and I kept laughing because it's like, the challenge with you is, and with so many people, and I don't mean to pinpoint people and say you like that,
No.
but I mean,
That's
but
okay.
he and I have been friends for 30
Yeah,
years,
yeah.
so it was easy. So I said, you eat all this crap. You
Uh,
gotta stop eating all this crap
right.
because you're gonna kill yourself. You're
Consuming.
eating the grief. You're
Consuming.
eating it. So through that, it
Consuming.
became Grief Pie.
Yeah.
Two guys eating grief one bite at a time.
Oh, wow.
So that's how it
And
kind of
that
came
makes
together. But
sense.
unfortunately, that's gone, and I'm sad. So
Yeah.
we're just revamping a little bit and doing something different. And like I said, you're my spirit animal, man. I mean,
Uh-huh.
what you're doing is super exciting to me, which is just all encompassing the human and not just focusing on one thing. And that's just
Thank
super
you.
exciting.
No, absolutely. I think that's why I take the approach that I do is because I think it all fits a bigger all the pieces fit into a bigger puzzle and we can't see all of them, but we can definitely put as many pieces on the board as we can. And I think it's all connected: mind, body, spirit, soul, psyche, all that stuff. So I love that. And the other thing too is that makes a lot of sense because what you said to your friend, you're a consumer, and that's the same thing as holding on to everything, which is the
Yeah.
opposite of letting go. So it makes sense because if you're
Exactly.
a consumer, that's what you do. And it's funny because so many billionaires in this world, people who've made it by every kind of marker that we define and characterize success, most of them have made pledges to be philanthropists instead of being collectors, so they've reversed after they've gotten everything, billions of dollars. Now their whole motto is to give back. So that makes perfect sense, which is
Yeah.
also known as releasing or letting go. So with
Yeah.
that, thank you so much, Gary. You bring so much energy to the space. I'm serious about us having a follow-up episode where we actually talk about some of your training and what you learned from it and what you think about some of the stages of grief and Kubler-Ross and some of the different processes. We can definitely dive into that. I mean, obviously we could talk about grief forever, but we could at least give it 2 episodes, if not 3. But thank you so much for being here today. I look forward to being a guest on your podcast, and everybody, definitely check out Gary Scott's Facebook profile, otherwise known as Gare Bear or the Garoneta. So definitely check him out. And we have so much to learn from him. Thanks so much, Gary. I look forward
You're
to future
awesome,
episodes.
Dr. David. Thank you.
Hey, you take care. Bye-bye.